Hello, welcome to Nealon Not Standing. I'm joined by the one and only Paulie Malinaggi, all the way over in New York. Paulie, how are you?
Good, man. How are you?
Good, not a bother, yeah. Great to have you on. Thanks so much for giving up your time to have a chat.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Well, I suppose from I'll take you right back to your early days, your days in Sicily, and for people who don't know, you grew up in Sicily. So tell us, I suppose, your story from how you from Italy to America and all in between.
Yeah, my grandparents, my mom's parents moved to the U.S. 3 years before I was born, and my mom moved with them. She was a teenager, and but she was still dating my father, so she ended up going back to Italy and got married to my father. And my father played in Serie C football. So after the season in 80 81, I was born in the fall of 81. After the season in 80 81, um, no, yeah, no, 79 80 season. 70 After the 79 80 season, um, they decided they were going to come to America. My father got a contract in Mexico to play for a year over there. So my mom was pregnant with me when they moved in August of 1980, and I was born in November. So I was born in the U.S. But after the season in June, my father got a contract back in Italy. So we ended up going back to Sicily. Ended up going back to Sicily in the summer of '81. So I was born in New York, but my we ended up going back to Sicily, and that's where I spent the majority of my first 6 years. We would come back every summer to visit my mom's parents because my father wasn't playing in the summers, and before when the season would get started in September, or before September, we know it's in the pre-camps and whatnot. We would head back to Italy. So I grew up in Sicily, but I was still familiar with the states because I was here every summer until I was 6 years old. At 6 years old, we moved back to the United States when my father stopped playing football.
Yeah, so I was speaking to you just off air there, and we were just kind of talking about football and stuff like that, and you were saying that you actually have more love for football and stuff like that. Probably something that people don't know about you unless they really, really know you, especially from maybe an
Yeah,
Irish audience. A lot of people would know you from, the stuff in the feud with kind of McGregor and Artem and stuff like
yeah,
that, but they probably don't know that you're a huge football fan.
yeah. That's funny. I wound up in boxing, I guess, because in the states you wind up, in other sports and whatnot. So I just kind of stumbled into boxing as a teenager. I was a bit of a troubled kid, but I always loved football. That was always my favorite sport. It's funny because in the United States, even as a kid, we had this Italian channel in the Northeast called well, it's Rai. With Rai is also in Italy as well, but there was like an international Rai channel, and you could get it in the states. In the Northeast, you could anyway. I don't know if you could get it in the rest of the United States, but I know you get it in the Northeast. And it was in it. They spoke in Italian, and you would get one league game, one Serie A game per Sunday morning. So at the time, they were all on Sunday morning, not like today where they spread them out for TV contracts. So at Sunday mornings, they would give you the best Serie A game of that week. Like whichever one was on the schedule, that was the best one. So you would get one, and that's it. At that time, they were all at the same time anyway. But we didn't have any. It was no options to say, "Oh, I want to watch this other game or this other game." It was the one you'd get, but it was typically the best Serie A game of that week. They usually put that one on, and that was on in the morning. And then about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, on the same Rai channel, which was 6, 7 o'clock at night in Italy, we would get what was called the Novantesimo Minuto. Novantesimo Minuto was the highlight show for all the games. So I remember I would watch Sunday morning. I'd watch the game, and then I'd watch the Novantesimo Minuto at 1 o'clock, where I get all the highlights of all the other games, and that was my routine. Like I said, I love football. You'd get a UEFA Cup game during the week. Even Cup Winners' Cup on Thursdays, the Champions Cup on Wednesday. At the time, it was called Champions Cup, not Champions League. And the Champions Cup, it ended up going to ESPN when it became the Champions League, and then we lost it on Riot. We had to get the English broadcasts because ESPN got the contract in the early to mid '90s. So then we would get when it became the Champions League, and so that went off of Riot. But we'd still get a UEFA Cup game. We'd get a Cup Winners' Cup. I can remember, watching all those as a kid on that Ride channel. I can still remember like randomly. I have like random memories. I can remember like the second leg of the Juventus Barcelona semifinal of the '91 Cup Winners' Cup, because we would only get the home games. So I remember the away leg in Barcelona. Juve had lost at 3-1, and I didn't get to see it because the game was in Barcelona, and we'd have the Italian newspaper. So knowing that Juve had lost the away leg, I remember watching the second leg, and we got it on. Because they were home, they put it on that Italian channel. So you would struggle to get your football matches, but you'd get them. If you knew how to follow it, you'd get them. And it was I remember Juve won that game 1-0 with a Roberto Baggio free kick in around the 60th minute, but it wasn't enough. And I remember Barca ended up going through, and then they lost the final to Man United in the final. I remember that. So there's random memories. It was, but at the time Serie A was so good, so it was so good to watch. So it was really the best time for Serie A, and at that time I remember thinking like, oh, I'm so fortunate that the Italian league is the best league in the world, thinking that that's always going to be the reality. Like, you don't realize at that age that things change. So I just remember thinking, cycle, this is so cool. Yeah. And I my first memories of football are with a very powerful Italian national team, which ended up winning nothing, ironically. With such a great generation of Italian football players that didn't even win anything. They have an 88 semifinal in the European Cup, a 90 semifinal in the World Cup, and then a 94 final loss in the World Cup as well. Those are the first generation I watched in football. Though that was a great generation, both for Italy and the Italian league Serie A and the national team, as well as just the time to watch Serie A, even with the terrific foreign players that were coming to play there.
Yeah, even like I was born in 1990, and the players that came in during the 90s were unbelievable as well. So like through that period of the 80s and 90s, I think more so the 90s was a bigger kind of spell for the Serie A in terms of like you had Ronaldo, and then you obviously had I know before that you had Maradona, but then you have like Vieri. You had probably the best strikers.
I tell you, Italy went through a real golden period, and it was literally started. I had no idea at the time. It literally started right when I started watching football. I started watching sports in general that I could follow along and start to understand them at 1988. And I can remember, Euro 88, Italy was a good team. The Serie A was a terrific league. And the Italian teams were doing very, very well in Europe. Of course, I did not know there was the ban on the English team, so that would have been interesting looking back now.
Yeah, well,
I didn't understand that. Yeah, it didn't. And you guys really got screwed as an Everton fan because I think in '85 you guys won the championship in England, and you didn't get to go to the Champions Cup the next year, right?
Yeah.
So that was right before my time. But you know what's funny? It still plays into it because my mother. We lived in Italy when the Heysel disaster happened, and my mother, in her craziness or overprotectiveness, didn't want me to attend live football matches as a kid. So when the '94 World Cup came in America, this is still I love my mom to death, but this is unforgivable. My grandfather and my uncles all were going to every Italy game in the '94 World Cup, no matter where. They were following Italy all over the country. And they told my mom, like, yo, we got a ticket for your son, for Paulie and my brother. Let us take the kids with us. And my mom was like, no, I'm not going to risk a riot happening like in Heysel. There was kids that, never came home. I mean, absolutely ridiculous, absolutely maddening because in '94, Italy was, Italy had, the heart attack kind of a World Cup because we opened up the World Cup losing to Ireland. And so then risking not even getting out of the group. But it went from that drastic disaster to reaching the final. So it was quite a month for my uncles and my grandfather. They made some memories for themselves. I had to watch it all on TV.
Yeah, that period is still kind of, because Ireland have just not really done that much in terms of football over the years since probably 2002 World Cup and the Euros then in 2016. We always seem to have some weird thing where we beat Italy. I know the last time we played, it was kind of more of a B team that we beat in 2016. But I suppose... did you ever have a soft spot?
Yeah, no, but Ireland, honestly, they're a capable team. Honestly, Ireland always, it's not like you don't get a gimme. Ireland is never a gimme game. Even if you got to beat Ireland, you got to play. I remember in '90, you guys got to the quarters. Italy beat you guys in the quarters, but it's crazy because you didn't win a game. You got all draws in '90, and then you beat Romania in a shootout in the second round. And that Romania team was pretty good. That Romania team, I believe they won the group with Argentina, or they came in second place. I don't remember. That was a good Romania team. You guys beat in penalty kicks.
Yeah,
and then we beat you.
Save, yeah.
Yeah, and then we beat you 1-0. But it was it was a tough fought game. It was a hard fought game.
Yeah, they still talk about Paul McGrath's performance in that game.
Yeah, because that was a very good Italy team. I tell you, the '90 team. It's funny because when I talk about the national teams that I've watched, now I'm old enough now to like be able to like talk like an old man about football. Like I go back over 30 years. I tell you, I watched Italy win a World Cup in 2006. I watched Italy win a European Cup last summer, summer of 2021. The best Italy team I've ever seen is the 1990 World Cup team. I mean, that is such a shame. I mean, what a team! It's just, and you guys played us very, very tough in the quarterfinals. I'll tell you. You know, very, very, very well done. Very, very well done. And then 4 years later, you beat it. 4 years later, I finally got to talk to Ray Houghton recently. Somebody had I forgot who it was. I forgot who it was that had his number. They called him. It was either somebody in boxing in England, and they said, "Oh, Houghton." I was like, I know him, you know, and because I was talking about how I was talking to him about there's no way he meant to hit that ball like that. You know, if you watch
Yeah.
that goal, it hits off his shin and takes a backspin, and it does it floats over Pagliuca, and because it's on a backspin, it just drops dead and goes into the net, you know, and I remember talking to I forgot. You know what's crazy? I can't remember who I was talking to, but I remember I've had this conversation with so many people in my life that you know it's on repeat mode. And I always say there's no way Howden meant to hit the ball like that. You know, it's like, he hit the ball and he scored. You know, and he's like, "Oh, I'll call him." And so he calls him up, and I was like, "You caused me a lot of misery with that goal." And I told him, "You didn't mean to hit that ball like that, no way." And he said, and he kind of, I could tell the sarcasm in his voice. He was saying, "Yeah, of course I meant to hit that ball," but he was kind of like joking around with it, like half admitting, like, you know, he mishit it too. But it came out perfectly. Sometimes you mishit it, it comes out perfectly.
Yeah, he's a great guy, and I don't think he's ever had to buy a
He's
drink.
a great player too. Honestly, he's a great player too. I didn't, because at the time, like I said, I would only follow the Serie A. Even now, I'm mainly a Serie A guy, but at the time, I was only watching Serie A. The only time I would watch international teams, teams from other leagues play was in the European competitions. And at the time, we didn't have like the TV contracts we have now, where in the US, you can basically watch any league you want. So, you know, I didn't realize, you know, the career Houghton had, you know, as a Liverpool player and all that. He's not just the guy that scored on Italy in the '94 World Cup. That was a very
solid player.
good
you know, he's probably goes down as one of our best ever players on that right hand side. Did you ever get to see Liam Brady? Obviously went to Juventus and was magnificent for them, and he won the league, scored that famous penalty when he knew he was leaving. Did you ever get to see any of that?
What year was that? What year was that?
It was, I think it was in the 80s. I'm not too sure. Early 80s, maybe.
No, it was before me then. It was before me. When I started watching football, I started in '88, and Milan won the Serie A. I didn't see Juve win a Serie A title until '95. You know, and Juve was a team that had the most Serie A titles. I think they still do have the most Serie A titles, but it was sort of I wouldn't say a dead period, because Juve won a UEFA Cup in that time as well. In 80, I think in 90 they won a UEFA Cup. But it wasn't the best period for Juve in terms of how good the Serie A was and what some other teams were doing. Like Milan was dominating, Inter won a Scudetto, Napoli won a couple of Scudettos at that time. So Juve kind of was playing second fiddle, but despite that, they were still playing well, and then they were very competitive in Europe. But I didn't see Brady, no.
I'm just reading on his Wikipedia, so he was at Juventus from 80 to 82, Sampdoria from 82 to 84.
I was around. That was when I was just born.
Yeah. I just thought just because it's that little link, just like Houghton was there, so I just thought you might have, maybe he played for Inter and Ascoli as well before he went back to West Ham.
It's funny. I probably my grandfather. My grandfather's a diehard Juventus fan. He's 86 years old. My grandfather can still remember the starting lineup for the first Juve team he ever rooted for, like around 1950 or something. I tell him sometimes, I mess with him. I say, give me the lineup, and he runs off all 11 starting guys. You know, like a 1950, 1951 team. You know.
Yeah, I'd say he was probably a big Brady fan. Your dad probably played against Liam Brady, I would say, maybe at some point.
Well, I don't know. My father played in the lower league, so he was in Serie C. So I don't know if Brady was playing at a elite level like Serie A team, you know, or maybe in the Coppa Italia or something, you know, because at that time the top teams could play the lower level teams in the preliminary rounds of the Coppa Italia. Things change, man. Football changed, because now they make the bad teams play each other, and then the top teams kind of get buys to the later rounds. You don't start playing the top teams until the later rounds. But at the time, the Coppa Italia, I think everybody just played everybody, you know, and eliminated each other one at a time. Now there's too many games, so they save the top teams for later, you know, because those top teams already have enough big games to play.
Yeah, and then obviously the internationals then pile up on top of that as well. But
Yeah, exactly. And
Italy's strange though, aren't they? Because like they go to win the Euros and then like then they don't make the World Cup, which is strange because you would have
yeah,
thought they would have been in there, you know. And they were a really
really,
good team, and
I
I
was
love the fact they beat England then as well in the final. That was really good.
I was so irritated. I tell you, I was so irritated because well, it hasn't been the best past decade for us. But in the meantime, we've had a couple of good performances. We won a European Cup last year, and even in 2016 when we had Conte in the European Cup, that was a pretty good team. You know, we lost to Germany in a penalty kick shootout, but Conte had them playing very well. Then we had Ventura coaching us, who was absolutely clueless, and we didn't make the 2018 World Cup. And then after that, with Mancini, we were clearly a different level. You know, he was getting the best out of our players. And then I don't know, man.
And
So
Vialli as well, who unfortunately passed away there.
it was very, very unfortunate with Vialli. Rest in peace. That was a very good footballer. But I'll tell you what. I'll tell you something. The fact that Italy just not qualifying for the World Cup, it also comes down to Europe. I got like lions over here in America telling me like CONMEBOL is the hardest qualification. No way, because you still get 5 spots in one big group. So you can have a subpar performance here and there. You'll still come in 4th place and qualify for the World Cup. In Europe, you have to win your group or you go to a playoff. So you can't have too many subpar performances or you wind up in a playoff or you wind up not even qualifying at all. You know, so that's what happened with Italy. Italy drew too many games in qualifying. You know, that's that lazy, stupid mentality. Drew too many games in qualifying, and the Swiss got past us. We were undefeated in qualifying. We drew too many games, and then Macedonia happened, which is inexplicable.
We've had a Macedonia moment as well. In fact, one of our players had to go around wearing, if they had a bad game in training, they had to wear a T-shirt saying "I had a Macedonia" because an infamous result.
We had a Macedonia too.
Yeah, so there you go. But it's funny. I always there's always some sort of link between the Italians and Ireland at competitions when they get to the same competitions. Like I think
we've come across each other. Yeah, we come across each other a lot. We come across each other a good bit, actually. You know.
Yeah,
it's funny because I think in '94 when you guys got out of the group, when you ended up against Holland, and Holland, I think they were in your qualifying group for the World Cup, and because of you and Holland, England hadn't qualified for the '94 World Cup because of Ireland and Holland, and then you ended up catching Holland in the second round of the World Cup, and I think they won the game 2-0 if I remember correctly. There was one bad goal Bonner let in; it went off his hands or something. I have a weird memory for football, man. I remember some crazy, like, distinct moments.
You remember the Scalacci goal?
Which one? The 90 goal against Ireland. Yeah. Donadoni with the initial shot, rebound saved by Bonner, and then Scalacci rebound. Scalacci was a goal hawk, man. I mean, he was right. Yeah, it's funny because he was in Dublin last week.
Talking about it, yeah.
Yeah, but I tell you, if you watch Scalacci's goal against Ireland and the one against Argentina, the next game in the semi, it's basically the same thing. The initial shot saved, and he's right there for the rebound. You know, I think against Ireland, Donadoni took the shot, and Bonner rebound saved it and fell right to Scalacci, who scored. And then in the next game against Argentina, it was Vialli who took the shot and fell right to Scalacci, who put it in. So Scalacci had such a knack. He was such a knack for where to be, man. Really a hawk for that, you know.
Yeah, something that Ireland really badly needs.
Plus a good Sicilian.
Yeah, like yourself. I suppose. Well, yeah. we'll jump back onto you because I think if we continue on football, we'll end up talking for hours about it, and we'll kind of skip over you. So yeah. I suppose we'll bring it back to you because this is why we got you on, and obviously you can have your football references without doubt in this whole podcast. By all means, do. But I suppose tell us about your upbringing, then moving to. Was it New York? Was it Brooklyn you moved to?
Yeah. So I went into, my first years of my life. Then my parents decided they were going to move to the States. My father was done playing football. And my grandparents were already in the States in Brooklyn, my mom's parents. And so we came here. Well, my father and my mom didn't get along. They were already kind of on their way out in the marriage. And I think after a little while that my father was here, he just didn't, I think things didn't work out. So he ended up going back to Italy, and that was it, So I just, at that point, we were here in the States. My father was back in Italy, and kind of lost touch for a little bit. My mom got remarried. Things happened, but I kind of lost my way a little bit in all that time, and ultimately, I wound up in boxing as a 16-year-old. wound up in boxing, and the rest kind of just took a shape of its own. From that point, from 6 to 16, it would just kind of started going downhill a little bit by a little bit for me personally, because I was just making bad decisions and growing up sort of no excuses, but you get yourself into some bad
Young and dumb.
situations. Young, dumb, and just confused. Looking for a think you're going to make your own answers and don't have to listen to anybody, probably needed some better guidance. I tell
Was
you
that
what, though, boxing came on. I had a good time. My grandfather made sure I got to a boxing gym when I got kicked out of school. And he had my uncle take me. And from there, just kind of started to be rewritten. My path kind of sort of changed then for the better.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, like, was it the fact that you obviously your dad was back home and you didn't have maybe to answer to him? I don't know what he was like, for you growing up. Was he like authoritative or whatever that maybe you were lacking that? I also know that you didn't speak English going over there, so was that tough?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it took me. Luckily I was there at 6 years old. So while I didn't speak English, I had two advantages. Number one, I was young enough to learn English, and number two, my community was so Italian that there was a lot of Italian at that
Okay,
time.
yeah.
That part of Brooklyn had a lot of Italians. It's actually Italian and Irish, to tell you the truth, mainly Italians, and so that was kind of good for me. But also going to school, I learned English, within a year or so, because at 6 years old, you're picking it up. You're sitting with, you're starting to use the language. You're watching TV, you're watching your cartoons and all that stuff, and everything's in English, and you pick it up. So I mean, I'd say at this point, English is my first language, but at that time, I had to learn it.
Yeah, I suppose people look at you and they think you're American, but you are actually Italian. Like you were brought up there. I know
Yeah,
then you became pretty much Italian American, but you actually
yeah,
would be
yeah. I
Italian.
mean, sometimes people don't know my story, so they think I'm just full on American. But like I said, my parents actually came to the U.S. for the first time when my mom was 6 months pregnant with me. So, and then they went back when I was about 7 months pregnant, when I was about 7 months old. So you know, it, my first foray into the States didn't last long. I was just born and then went back to Italy,
Yeah.
and then I came back later. I actually have a younger brother. My parents had another child, so I have a younger brother, and he's born in Sicily. Because he was born, after that when we were living there.
Yeah.
But he also lives in the States now, obviously.
So obviously back and forth. You still go back and forth there now, do you?
Yeah, I didn't go back from '86 to 2000 because I kind of lost touch with my father and all that stuff. And in '98 I kind of got back in touch with my father, and so I started to go back. Starting in 2000, I started to go back regularly to Italy, and I've been back, various times since then. I've even, it's funny because then in my boxing career, I've even gotten to do some media stuff over in Italy. Talk shows and appearances on sports talk shows and whatnot. So it's been pretty cool. It's worked out, and also the fact that I was able to retain the ability to speak Italian also helped out, so that I was able to do stuff in Italy with the media and just promotion wise and whatnot. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I was doing my research there, and I suppose this will bring it into, because you spoke there about the 2000s, and you were trying to get yourselves into the 2000 Olympics. So what year did your boxing career start? Because I know you kind of got into it as your teenage years, which is traditionally quite late for
Yeah,
a boxer.
yeah. I got into it at 16 years old, and in 2000 I was trying to make the Olympic team, and so I thought maybe I could try to grab a spot on the Italian team. But unfortunately, the Italian embassies, they don't work very quickly. They still don't work very quickly, and so the paperwork and the bureaucracy of trying to get my Italian passport wasn't working out, and so I wasn't able to do it. So I turned pro in 2001, and then I ended up getting an Italian passport later. I wanted an EU EBU title towards the end of my boxing career. I was trying to position myself at the EBU title, which is the European Championship, where you have to be an Italian citizen. I was trying to kind of use that as like a little bit of a springboard to try to get me back when I had already fallen off of the world class level, and it didn't work out because it was the very end of my boxing career. But it was pretty cool. And now, at this point, I have dual citizenship. But like I said, it was always cool. It was always cool. I always had sort of a bit of a presence on the Italian boxing scene as well in Italy, because like I said, because I speak Italian, so I was more. I was also more or less on that scene as well.
Yeah. Well, I was just on your. I suppose I just want to get a run through of I suppose, your boxing career. So you had the fight for the light welterweight title, the WBO against Mikael Cotto, who was, basically the biggest puncher in the division. And you fought in that fight with a broken orbital bone, and you continued to fight that fight. Talk to me about that fight and your mentality going into it.
Yeah, it was the first World Championship fight. You don't get into boxing to just be a club fighter or just an average guy. And so I had made my rounds through the amateurs and through the pro ranks. I had been through some injuries with my hands, so I had been some frustrating times, but I had managed to stay undefeated and work my way up the ladder. So, when you get that call to fight for a world title, it's not really about the opponent; it's about the chance to be a world champion, which is everybody's dream when they start boxing. So, I was excited. There was anxiety, there was nerves. I knew Cotto was very, very good, but I also looked at him as a kid who was my age. We are basically the same age, me and Cotto. So I looked at him like, okay, yeah, he's very good, but he's my age. I shouldn't have any extra respect for him. He's just one of my peers. But looking back and everything, it was a tough fight. I lost a 12-round decision. It was a big learning experience. Broke my orbital bone in the process, but it was certainly I wouldn't have known at the time, but he wound up being the best fighter I ever fought in my boxing career. And I fought a lot of very good fighters.
Yeah, because I think Mayweather had said he was the biggest puncher in the division as well.
Yeah. And I think Mayweather said he gave him the toughest fight of his career, too. I mean, Miguel was a very, very good fighter, very, very good thinker, knew how to put you in bad positions, kept a lot of pressure on you, a lot of stress on you. And the fact that he was a big puncher also didn't help the cause, that's for sure.
Yeah, but it didn't stop you. You still went the whole way with him. Just on there, so you went on then to fight in Doe, and then you bet him, and then you had to defend the belt against him then as well. So talk to us about, I suppose, those kind of fights and that period.
Yeah, with Endo was I was a bit now there was more nerves because I lost my first chance at a world title. So a year later I got the shot at Endo for the IBF world title, and I had seen Endo fight against Cotto, and now having been in the ring with Cotto, I knew how tough he was, how strong he was. And having seen the Endo and Cotto fight, which was a real good give and take fight where Cotto won on points, but it was a razor close fight, I said, oh my goodness, man, I've got another guy like Cotto on my hands. This is going to be a tough fight, because he was an all-out pressure guy with a great chin who really stressed you physically and mentally. But I believe the experience with Cotto really helped me out. Technically, he was not as good as Cotto. He was physically, he was a very physical guy and a pressure guy, but he wasn't technically as good as Cotto. And so the mentality I had for the Cotto fight, which was, really put me in a different level mentally for these kind of fights, I think really helped me out. I brought it into the Endo fight. And once Endo couldn't match up physically from a talent level, the way Cotto was from a technical and talent level, all his effort wasn't going to matter. I was able to outbox him despite the pressure he put on. And it was a good win for me. It accomplished one of the big dreams. It ticked off one of the boxes, and one of the boxes that I had in mind to try to accomplish. And we went from there. But it was certainly a big moment for me.
Yeah, I think a lot of people who obviously get into boxing, well, I think everybody who gets into boxing, that's what they set out to achieve is a world title. I suppose you came out and you said that you didn't really appreciate the first one till you got the second one. Why was that? Did you just feel like you hadn't earned it, or what way were you thinking?
I just felt like I always felt like I was going to be a world champion, So I was like, I felt like it was like what was expected of me. I felt like, it wasn't it was a really, don't get me wrong, it felt terrific to be a world champion, but it also was like, it wasn't something that shocked me. Like I always put it on myself to, I'm going to be a world champion. I used to tell people, even people thought I was crazy when I first started boxing, but I was something that I'd always expected of myself. So I couldn't appreciate it as much as I should have, because it was just, for me, it was par for the course. But once I realized, I went through all the in between after that, we're losing the title and having the up and down career in between before winning the second title, I realized, how difficult this really is. The first time around, the difficulties was more in dealing with the injuries. Yes, I lost the Cotto fight, but I still felt like I was up to par to become a world champion. But it was just mainly the injury. So I felt like it was that if it wasn't for myself, I can do this again, But in reality, between the first and second world title, there was a lot of ups and downs. And really, I learned how difficult it really is. You almost get there. I lost a world title fight to Amir Khan. I had to start over again. And then finally, I was able to win it in 2012. And so you really appreciate it because, that second one, I appreciated it more because it was I started realizing nothing. You can't take anything for granted. Nothing is a given. No matter how much you expect of yourself, it still doesn't mean it's going to happen. So I was able to. The fact I was able to do it, and I was able to do it as a 3.5 to 1 underdog when I won my second world title. It really made me more appreciative of it.
Yeah, because I was gonna say like you vacated the title to fight Ricky Hatton, and that was just after he fought Mayweather and lost. Did you feel like you maybe had the upper hand on him because you were obviously going up in levels, and maybe he was maybe on the decline, and maybe have his name on your record? Was that your thought at the time?
Yeah, I mean, I felt like there was definitely a good time to get Hatton, but at the same time, um, things happen. Certainly, I think if anybody watches that fight from a technical standpoint, you know, yeah, I definitely left a lot to be desired. But if you really pay attention, I've left a lot to be desired. Probably in the two fights before it as well. It wasn't a very good year for me. I was defending the title by the skin of my teeth, and it really the only excuse I have is, from a technical standpoint, me and Buddy McGregor, my trainer, weren't really the same kind of boxing minds. Buddy's a good trainer in his own right for certain boxing styles. I have my own boxing style, and I'm a good fighter in my own right for my boxing style. But I suppose to put it in football analogies, Roberto Baggio was a terrific footballer, but he couldn't get along with guys like Marcelo Lippi and Rico Sacchi, who were terrific coaches themselves, but they just couldn't really understand the technical aspect of a Roberto Baggio. It didn't make them incapable. It actually they proved more than anything else that they were very capable, but it wasn't on that same mindset as a guy like Baggio, who himself wouldn't be wrong either, because obviously his whole resume proves that he also was capable and is also right in his own way. So I feel like that was sort of the issue with me in 2008. I had hired McGregor, more so a managerial decision, not my decision. And we had a good first year. We won a world championship, but really from a technical standpoint, the technical stuff started to really implant itself very strongly in the second year. The first year, you're more so still working off of your own instincts and your own things. But the second year, the technical stuff started to really take effect, and it wasn't really to complement my boxing style at all. And it happens. Like I said, it doesn't mean somebody's incapable or the other guy's not capable or whatnot. It just means that, stylistically, the styles don't mesh. And probably a regret that I have. And again, it's not a knock on the trainer, because the trainer has done things. That trainer had done things before me, and he did things after me that were very good as well. So very, very capable guy. As well as myself as a boxer, I also accomplished things afterwards as well. But it is a little bit of regret because I really felt like Hatton was beatable at that time. While being inside the ring with him, I wasn't overly awed, even though the fight was one-sided. It was just, the reaction timing and everything. We hadn't trained for it, and I had always been a reaction fighter. And we hadn't trained that way, so the reactions aren't just going to show up on fight night when you haven't trained that way, unfortunately. And you can probably see the writing on the wall in the Endo rematch and even the Herman and Cujo defense, the other two fights before that in that year. But it is what it is. You live and you learn. After that, I got rid of everybody, management, trainer. I just said, you know what? From now on, I'm taking nobody's advice but myself, and that's it.
That ended up treating you well, I think. But just if you had maybe won the Hatton fight, there was a lot of talk with you, Pacquiao, Mayweather. Was there ever a fight in the pipeline that had you beaten Hatton?
I think I would have probably got the Pacquiao fight if I'd have beaten Hatton. Maybe that's a blessing in disguise that Hatton got the fight instead of me. Pacquiao was blazing through everything at that time. I've had my suspicions of why, but nobody wants to hear them. People still don't want to hear them. But I think I was at a far from normal. Yeah, that was a far from normal situation. So maybe it was a blessing in disguise, because I would have got in there and probably got completely wrecked. The same way Ricky did. But it's funny, after I beat Juan Diaz literally a year later, 13 months later, I beat Juan Diaz after I lost to Ricky Hatton. And that Christmas, it was talks. My team was getting calls both from the Mayweather side and from the Pacquiao side. We were in talks with both sides, and neither fight happened. Pacquiao ended up fighting Joshua Colati, and Mayweather ended up fighting Shane Mosley. And I got the Khan fight, the Amir Khan fight instead. And getting beat, now you're no longer in the conversation for Pacquiao Mayweather, because I got beat by Khan. So I was always around there or just one fight away from it, and it just always, it never panned out. But it's okay. I had a very busy career,
Yeah,
for
no,
a
I was
lot of
just gonna
guys
go on
that
the Diaz one because you fought him twice, and then
yeah.
you were basically robbed, and you came out and you said, boxing's full of shit because of
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah, yeah. Because after the Hatton fight, I was not in a very politically connected situation. I was looked at as a sort of a has been, a guy on the decline. So the only opportunity I got was as an opponent to this ex-world champion Juan Diaz in his hometown. They kind of just wanted to use me as a resume filler, and I could see the writing on the wall. I'm like, I'm just a resume filler for this guy. I have to take this deal, so it's not a great deal, and I could see this is basically a situation to get Diaz back onto the course for another world championship because he had just lost. And so I wanted a bit of a different situation. I would have still fought Diaz, but I wanted it under a bit of a different terms, mainly not having to go to Texas to fight him. But the only way I was going to get any kind of fight of any kind of relative importance was this. So I decided to take it upon myself and said, you know what? People still look at me from the Hatton fight and they have the wrong view of me. If they visibly see me performing in a fight with Juan Diaz, even if I get robbed, they'll see that I'm physically capable of still being at a world-class level, because right now they're writing me off. So ultimately, it was either don't fight anybody or fight Juan Diaz in Texas. So I decided to take the Juan Diaz fight in Texas, knowing full well that the possibility of some bad politics may happen. And so I took that risk. And you know what? Despite coming up with the loss, it was still worth it because I wound up getting a rematch out of it, winning it, and then putting myself back on the course.
yeah, and then obviously at that time Khan was a big name, 2010, and
Mm-hmm.
you fought
Yeah.
him. I think he said he's the fastest
Mm-hmm.
puncher you ever faced.
Yeah. Absolutely. Khan's hands in his prime were blazing fast. Tall guy as well. Very good legs. A prime Amir is you had to catch him. Some guys caught him and knocked him out, but otherwise, you weren't going to run around against the guy. It was very, very difficult. Very, very difficult. You had to actually physically fight him. You couldn't box him. And if you notice, the guys that boxed with Khan had a lot of problems. Myself, Devin Alexander, Zab Judah, the technical boxers. He's very, very difficult to fight from a technical standpoint. You probably the best bet was to be physical with him, and then the physical guys gave him more trouble. Guys like Maidana, guys like Danny Garcia, Greatest Prescott, so on and so forth. So stylistically, it was a terrible matchup for me, and Khan made me pay for it.
Yeah, because I just remember him around that time, and just his name was everywhere. Maybe because it was a lot of Sky Sports and Sky Box Office and
Yeah.
all that time.
He was Amir was the Brooklyn Killer. He beat me. He beat Dimitri Salita, and he beat Louis Collazo.
Yeah. I don't know where I should be smiling there or not because it's obviously against you, but I suppose
No, but it's okay.
yeah,
You look back, everything's part of your story. Good and bad.
true. It's what pieces you together, I suppose. But did you change the trainer after the Khan fight, or was it before that, the Diaz, or where was it you changed?
No,
it?
no, no, no. I had Sharif Yunan for the Khan fight. And I had Sharif Yunan after the Hatton fight. After the Hatton fight, I changed a lot of parts of my team, and it was a good run with Sharif Yunan. Actually, I wound up moving to LA after the Khan loss and changing my whole team again. But I wound up rejoining with Yunan later on when I fought Muscatello for the EU title years later. So it was just a change, more so for a change of pace after the Khan fight, change of promoter, change of trainer, uh, change of geography. I moved to Los Angeles for a couple of years, trained out there. I just needed a new start, but I can't say that from the technical perspective. Yunan wasn't a good trainer for me. He was, we meshed well, and like I said, I got back with him years later. For a fight or two, and he actually was my trainer for the Lobov bare knuckle fight as well. But me and Yunan still have a good relationship. Yeah.
Okay. Well, then you went. I just here looking at your record here. You went to fight Zinchenko then, or Senchenko, over in Ukraine, and I think he was looking upon you as the name to propel himself, and then you bashed him pretty well.
Yeah. Zinchenko was looking to enter the U.S. He'd made about 6 or 7 title defenses in Ukraine, and I think they needed an American big American name to defend the title against, just to bring this foreign fighter to the U.S. with a bit of a fanfare, with a name they could sell on his resume to the American public. As a guy who undefeated ex-Olympian, who had beaten an ex-world champion like Malinaggi, as well as made several defenses of this world championship. So they were looking to bring him in with some momentum. And again, like the Diaz fight, I was brought in just as fodder, really, just as a resume filler, and I was able to turn it around. So every once in a while, I would get brought into these situations and get myself up for them, and I'd pull off the upset. But it's certainly, again, part of the story wasn't easy, but also things I'm proud of as well.
Yeah, did that give you extra motivation then, because you were basically being brought in as, like, you would say over in
Yeah,
America, a tomato can, but I would say a tomato can.
yeah. I think that just that win in general gave my career a second boost. It prolonged my career because even now as a two-time world champion, even after you lose the title, as a two-time world champion, people are going to once again look at you as a resume filler because now you've recently been a world champion again. So, I was able to actually get some other money fights where I came up short, but because of the fact that I'd padded up my resume with another world championship, I was able to get paid very well for a couple of other fights towards the end of my career, just on the basis of having a good resume.
Yeah, well, you were in, like, at that time, that was the division that I suppose a lot of people were looking at, because you had, like, your Mayweathers, you had Pacquiao, yourself. An exciting
Yep.
time for that division.
Mhm.
Rather, like,
Yeah.
now it's
Yeah. Yeah.
heavyweights again.
Yeah. 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 Of course, everything goes through phases.
Bit like football, and the way you said about leagues and stuff like that,
Exactly.
Serie A
Yep.
and stuff. Yeah.
Exactly.
Talk to
Exactly.
me about the Adrian Broner fight.
The Broner fight, that's where I lost my second world championship. It was certainly a well promoted fight. I'll tell you what though, it was the last fun promotion I had. I always liked being part of a trash talking promotion, but some guys just didn't have the personality for it, and Broner just had the personality for it. He knows how to sell a fight well. I can always sell a fight well if you give me the platform for it. And I'll be honest, me and Broner I think we were perfect fodder for one another, and we had very, very high TV ratings for that fight. As a matter of fact, I still think it's one of the mistakes that boxing likes to do is shoot itself in the foot. I don't understand how that rematch was never made. There was all the ingredients were in there for a terrific rematch that would have sold. Instead, they went and got Adrian, beat his next fight against Maidana, and then 2 fights later, I lost to Porter, and that was the end of all that. We would have had a terrific rematch, terrific ratings. The trash talk would have continued. There would have been a world championship still on the line because he took mine. Like I said, all the ingredients there for probably for a trilogy, if I'm honest. But boxing's a funny game.
Yeah, because I'm just looking there, like, you mentioned Porter, you had a great win against Judah as well,
Yeah,
and that seems like one of your biggest or your best wins on paper because of the way he's gone
yeah,
on.
yeah. With Zab, with Zab was a big win for me. That we were it was sort of at a moment where they were trying to eliminate both of us. We had both come off competitive losses, so somebody was going to continue at a high level. Somebody was going to fall off. Because the loser was going to have 2 losses in a row. So yeah, I'm glad it was Zab and not me.
Yeah, it's nice to get one back, I suppose. Then you said
Yeah.
that after the Porter fight you were going to retire. What made you reconsider?
Um, I had very, very bad concussion symptoms after the Porter fight, probably for about 8, 9 months, and I just didn't think I didn't think they were going to go away. I woke up with morning sickness, like every morning, like nausea, like I was pregnant or something. It was weird, and I thought there's no way I can take a punch if this is the way I randomly get. I randomly get this nausea, but after about 8, 9 months, it sort of started to dissipate, and I started getting back in training. I started feeling like I was okay, and that was it. But I'll be honest with you, I never took the same punch again after that. It was really, really, I don't know if it was psychological or whatnot, but you get almost like you get PTSD or something. But I didn't, my punch resistance certainly dwindled after that. Even in fights that I won after that, I never felt comfortable getting hit again, at least not the same way.
Yeah, I suppose it catches up with you after a while. Like we were speaking about Amir Khan there.
Yeah,
We saw
yeah,
him against Kell Brook. Like,
yeah. And I'll tell you what, it's funny because we fight with 8 ounce gloves. Those are the damaging shots. It's funny as I was always a more aggressive fighter in sparring, right? You got a headgear on, you got bigger gloves on, and that never stopped even after even when I was training after the Porter fight. I was always in very, very physical, high contact sparring sessions, but in reality, I would get to fight night and it would just be different this time. Like it was just no headgear, 8 ounce gloves, and it was just getting hit just felt different. It just yeah, like I said, even in fights that I won, it just felt different now at that point with the small gloves. And again, I don't know if it was the PTSD because the small gloves or whatnot, but even I continued to spar very, very heavy in all my training camps after that. And aside from getting injured because of the age, that was never an issue. But the fights though, the Porter fight, the Garcia fight, Even fights I won, I'll take a good shot, and it would still kind of rattle me, a little bit.
Yeah. But it's because probably you're getting that little bit older as well at that point.
Yeah, yeah,
Do
yeah.
you know what I mean?
Hmm.
Well, I wouldn't know because
Hmm.
I haven't stepped in there, but like from you see
Yeah, yeah.
from other
It was,
fighters and stuff.
yeah, yeah. It was. I don't know. I mean, it wasn't terrible. Like I said, I mean, in the Eggington fight, I was winning the fight until I got stopped. It was close, but I was winning. So I mean, it wasn't like I couldn't like compete at all. But it was definitely different. I mean, at one time in my life I was a world class fighter. So yeah, I certainly wasn't that anymore.
Yeah. So there's like a slight drop off maybe.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, because you just reading there, like you had a good showing against Danny Garcia, you lost that, but then you won the Brooklyn title against Moscatelio.
Yeah, Muscatello, I won the EBU EU title. Then I beat Gabriel Bracero with the Brooklyn title. That was like a little makeshift title they made for me and Zab, and Bracero wanted to try to win it, so we created like a little derby style rivalry with Bracero as well, But all good, all respect. These are guys that I still get on well with, Zab, Bracero, and all these guys. They're all New York local guys.
Yeah, and I suppose the infamous moment before the Eggington fight, you obviously called out Conor McGregor and said you'd punched the beard off him. Was that was to get, I suppose, traction
Yeah,
for one of
yeah,
your fights? Was
yeah,
it?
yeah. I think it was before the Eggington fight. Yeah, I heard that McGregor was gonna come into boxing, so
Yeah, he was
like
due
I
to get his pro
usually like.
license. Yeah,
Yeah, it was like I usually like to do. I like to try to sell myself as put myself in these kind of moments. As I figured, let me try to attract his attention. So maybe he'll fight. At the time I took his foray into boxing seriously. Now I kind of realize he's more of a social media icon. He just looks for moments to sell himself very well. But at the time I thought, obviously I'm younger now. Even guys like even other guys would do this. So like the YouTubers, the same thing. They're not looking to actually be fighters. They're looking to just pick their moment, right? So McGregor was the first guy to do that. So I was thinking, this guy's going to be looking to test himself out. Let me put myself in the mix. Let me talk some trash. And it was always about the Mayweather fight. Which is very smart, honestly. You got to go for that one. At least that one you can always be excused for losing because that was the fighter of his generation, even if he was retired.
yeah. I suppose in around that time, you got your European title fight that you really wanted. You spoke about that at the start. To
Yeah,
get that to
I got
represent Italy.
Yeah, I was fighting Eggington, and I think if I would have beat Eggington, I would have got the shot at the European title, which Eggington ended up beating me, and then he got the European title shot, and he won it. Funny because Eggington is always a bit of an overachiever himself. He ended up becoming the IBO super welterweight champion recently, and then lost it to Dennis Hogan, the Irish Australian. But Eggington was he's a good scrapper and always in entertaining fights, and he brings a fast pace. And at that age, I kind of wasn't really having it anymore.
Yeah, no, I was just saying there, like, was it more difficult that you lost the fight, or the European title, or the kind of the end of your boxing career?
I was disappointed to not get a shot at the European title because it was always something that as a European blooded person I always wanted just for my own personal satisfaction. Obviously, I had been world champion already, so those things it wasn't really for the accomplishment. It was more so just for my own self pride, as a European to have a chance to win a European title, and I was disappointed I didn't get that. But also when I lost the Eggington fight, I also knew like okay, it's time to be done. I can't compete the way I want to. I can't do the things I want to, and so. It kind of falls apart. You decide it's better off to not do it anymore.
Yeah, would you not, like, now, if you look back at your boxing career, you should be proud, like you've a two-time world champion.
Yeah, yeah. I don't often think about it, but yeah, it was a part of my life. It was a good amount of years. It was in boxing, so it's not, people. It's part of what defines me, right? I mean, I was a boxer for, I was in boxing for 20 years of my life from a physical standpoint, and then even as an announcer to this day. So certainly it's been something that has defined who I was and who I am and who I became. Right. So I mean, yeah, I don't. It's part of my story. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I think if you look at it, like, a lot of people want to be remembered as a champion, and want to be remembered as, say, a good, what did you call it, a commentator there?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So like
Yeah.
people want to be known as these things. You're basically you've achieved it, and you are still achieving it in terms of
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
commentators. So a lot of people say you're a top analyst in terms of boxing. You know, the way you break it down and stuff like that. A lot of people would say that about you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, listen, I just to be honest, from an analyst perspective, it's cool. For me, I do enjoy it. I enjoy being an analyst. I enjoyed the time I had as a fighter. But I'm I don't care what people view me as, to be honest. I'm I'm 42 years old. I'm just happy that I'm able to live a comfortable life, and I'm blessed that I've been able to accomplish what I've accomplished. That just led me to this point in my life. I I don't really look at it as about it. I'm appreciative if anybody has anything nice to say. Don't get me wrong. It's very, very, very flattering. But frankly, I don't really care. I don't worry about that. I'm more so, I'm glad that I'm able to, despite tough times that a lot of people in the world are living in, I'm able to still, live a happy life and a good life.
Yeah. You spoke about McGregor there, and I suppose I don't know how that was it. You obviously went and sparred with him, and then that created a whole lot of controversy on top of that. But
Yeah.
like that, then did that in some ways kind of get your name out there even more, because he was having this kind
Yeah.
of back and forth with you.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I think a
Yeah.
lot
I
of
think,
Irish
I
fans had a
think,
lot of disdain towards you because he was so loved at the time. Now
yeah.
that's shifted since, but
Mm,
a lot of
yeah.
people kind of had disdain towards you.
I, Yeah, listen, I'll tell you what, at the time I thought it was very strange, everything that happened. I got called, I was friends with Dean Burns, so in LA, because he's an Irish boxer, and his brother ended up working with Conor McGregor. I had no idea. So Dean, I hadn't spoken to in years, because I moved from LA years before. Ends up calling me randomly. I hadn't heard from Dean in a while. And said, "Hey, my brother wants to call you. Pass him your number?" I'm like, "Sure." I didn't know it. It was that his brother Jerry worked for Conor McGregor. And so his brother contacted me and said they want to bring me in for sparring for Conor. And I thought, you know what? I had retired already, but I thought, you know what? I said, could be uh, an interesting tidbit to my life. I always like to, have these little stories, where I look back on and say, hey, I was a part of that. I was a part of that. So I was like, yeah, it could be interesting, just to be part of this camp. It'll be interesting to see, I'll see, if Conor has a realistic chance to do this, I'll get in there. I thought I went in there thinking like, it'll be a helpful situation for Conor. And at the same time, it'll also be good. And honestly, I saw the weird, people are really fickle. When I first got called, I was getting a lot of support on social media, like, oh, I was going to help Conor McGregor, the Irish fans, everybody was happy, Nobody knew that Conor had a more, sideways agenda for everything, So everybody was just kind of like, hey, yeah, you know what? Paulie's going to go help Conor, it'll be good. I'm sure Paulie will have a lot of answers to some questions him and his team might have. And so I went there. And when I got there, it was, honestly, it was like being in a Twilight Zone. I mean, these guys put us in some weird random house that I wouldn't put a crackhead in that house. For a guy who was making $100 million, or supposedly was making $100 million, one of the cheapest guys I ever met in my life. I didn't make a small percentage of the money he made just in that fight alone. I never treated sparring partners like that, But again, it was his camp. I didn't even have any complaints about that at the time, We had a couple of good sparring sessions, maybe 10 days apart, 2 weeks apart, because I had to leave and go work a commentating job, and then I had to come back. And then that's it. I mean, we had 12 rounds. If I'm honest, looking back now, and I think more people now are more apt to, understand my side of the story. I think Conor thought he was getting me out of shape, so wanted to, beat me up and maybe sell himself as having a legitimate chance at Mayweather. And when he still got beat up, despite me being out of shape, when he still got beat up, I think it really pissed him off, and he wanted to get back at me somehow, because I think a piece of him was still holding a grudge from the trash talk I'd had. But at the time, that wasn't even personal. That had been just to sell a possible fight with me and him. So I think he had an agenda to sell the fight, also an agenda that he thought he was going to teach me a lesson, because he was going to catch me out of shape. And it's not. I tell you what, it's not that difficult when a guy is not in shape to make sure he doesn't go 12 rounds. You just got to push the pace just a little bit. But that's why I told him he had no balls. He had no balls in the sparring. He never had any balls in his career, because when all you have to, yes, I'm better than you at boxing. But if you just force me to work hard for about 5-6 rounds, I won't be able to do 12 rounds. I'm not in shape for it, So if even if it means you getting the worst of the sparring for the first 5-6 rounds, but you push it as hard as you can and you make me work hard, you're going to stop me, because we were supposed to do 12 rounds that day. But he just couldn't get brave enough to push the pace like that. So I was able to actually do the full 12 rounds. And so that in itself tells you who was in control of things. Because if I'm out of shape and I actually get beat up the way he sold it, there's no way I can go 12 rounds. You know, you're not going to survive that. You're already out of shape. And then the guy's beating you up. How can you possibly go 12 rounds? You know what I'm saying? How can you possibly do that? You know? So, you know, the fact that I went 12 rounds when I hadn't barely stepped in a gym in 4 months probably should have, a person with common sense should have understood how pitiful his boxing was going to be in the Mayweather fight. Then Mayweather carried him. I mean, I've never seen Mayweather fight like that in my life, where he just kind of put his hands up and just walked forward for about 10 rounds before he finally decided to knock him out. It was a good sell. It was a terrific sell. I mean, Conor's a great salesman.
But you were a huge part of that too. Like you were like if you were to put it in WWE terms, you were like another kind of side to it.
I was more flabbergasted, you know, like how people fell for it. I was like, wow, it's crazy, you know. But you know, people never surprise you, never fail to surprise you. It was like, because like I said, I got support when I was first announced going to the camp, you know. So then I couldn't believe like these people. I mean, Conor could take a shit on these people's front porch and they'd still give him a hug and kiss if they saw him. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, it was just about Conor. It was just about being a fan of Conor McGregor. It was just a fan of being a Conor McGregor. It wasn't really anything else. You know what I mean? Like, so it wasn't a matter if Conor was right or wrong. It was just always back Conor no matter what. And that's sort of what I realized it became for those fans. So I was like, all right, you know, you live and you learn, really. I mean, for me, I think, you know, 5 years on, nobody's ever seen more than 5 or 6 seconds of that highlight sparring. And even now, even those 5 or 6 seconds are different parts cut together. He couldn't even find 5-6 seconds consecutively. But I think more people have some common sense now than they did before about that sparring and kind of know what happened, especially what he's done since that he can't win a fight. But he's still a terrific salesman. I tell you, I've never seen a punching bag being sold so well in my life. I mean, we've got Everlast catalogs, we've got Grant catalogs, we've got all Khalid Reyes. I mean, but the best punching bag that you can ever sell, I mean, is Conor McGregor. That is unbelievable. I mean, I'm still in awe how that's possible. But yeah, that's how it comes down to.
And but, then, but it's just I remember just how much you were actually involved on the side thing, because it was just show after show after show, press conference after press conference after press conference. And then obviously the one that you turned up at and you had to go at you.
And it's funny because even that one wasn't planned. I was working for Sky Sports and I was working for Showtime and I had to cover the press. I have to cover the press event. And now I was like, I've got to figure out what he's saying. So I've got to be kind of close so that when we discuss this on the air, I know what he said so that we can discuss his thoughts going into fight week. And so people think like I was stalking it. No, I was there working. I had to hear what he was telling the media. I wasn't going to ask him a question, but I had to listen to what he was saying. So that way there were some talking points when I was on the air. And instead, you know, we ended up getting into a situation with him and his manager, and then Conor got there. And then before you know it, there's all cameras there. Now I have to say something, you know. So I the first thing that came to my mind was to say what I was telling him when we were sparring, you know, that he was never going to have the balls to do anything, to ever take a chance on anything, you know. And sure enough, that's how it went up, you know.
Yeah, and so that obviously that blew over. I know you were trying to get a fight with him after Mayweather and stuff like that. I think you went back to UFC at that point then. But then you ended up with Artem fighting Artem.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and I think the Artem fight was interesting because Artem, I think, you know, that fight came my way because of the McGregor situation. So it ended up getting me an extra payday. You know, they paid me rather well for that fight. You know, I broke my hand. I still thought I won the fight. I think from a technical standpoint, I'll be honest with you, nobody in the arena thought Artem won the fight. I mean, I had my friends that were in the arena, and they were the people that bet Artem were getting ready to pay them. You know, as we waited for the decision. You know. So I'll be honest, everybody can talk trash now. They're just talking trash because I didn't get the decision. But, you know, they know who won that fight. You know, and I fought the fight with one hand for 3 out of 5 rounds. I broke my hand in round 2. I basically had to make it more technical than I wanted to, but I still made it very technical, even one-handed. And I still felt, you know, it was clear who won the fight. But and then they, like I said, they know that too. Nobody in that arena thought Artem won the fight until they announced it. You know, I remember that arena the way it was and everything else, and even what the people were telling me after. Nobody thought that Artem won that fight. Now he won it, so you know everybody will talk and say their opinion. But when it happened, when they're waiting for the decision, there wasn't a person on earth that thought Artem won that fight.
Yeah, well, I remember watching it like 3 or 4 in the morning, absolutely
Yeah.
hammered watching it. Actually watching it in the house down the road. But anyway, so I was just kind of boozing and watching it, and obviously at that stage you just want to see two people fighting, you know what I mean? And obviously you
Yeah.
both did that,
I'll say.
so it was entertaining at the same time, you know. Just
Yeah, yeah.
just on that though, like obviously you've seen since that himself and Conor are now kind of feuding over the whiskey. Are you surprised by that
Yeah,
at
I
all?
mean,
And
I don't.
what's your relationship like with Artem?
Yeah,
Do you have as much disdain maybe as you would for Conor?
no, no, no. Me and Artem honestly never said anything again. 'Cause I told Artem after, I said, "Hey, man, listen, it's nothing personal. Just let's not lie about what happened. Like that's it. You were there that day. Let's leave it at what it is. Especially now, we got in there, we settled it, we fought each other. I said, but let it. I said, let things be. Don't continue to back Connor's lie. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And he was like, yeah, no problem. And he, honestly, I got to respect Artem. He kept his word. Never talked about the McGregor sparring again. He didn't want to go against Conor and then say that I beat up Conor because he knows I did. He knows I beat up Conor. He was there. But at the same time, he stopped lying about it. So I give him that respect about it. He stopped lying about it, and he never brought it up again. So definitely, that was worth the respect for sure.
Yeah, because at the moment he's suing Conor for the whiskey for basically he promised him a percentage of it or something. That's the claim.
Yeah, that's what I
And
heard. I heard they had their issues, man. I heard
yeah,
that there. I don't know. Like I said, I don't get involved in that, but I'll be honest. I don't think Conor probably has any true friends. I don't think there's anybody that actually cares much for Conor. I think people want to be around the star that is Conor. Hey, man, if that's fine with him, as long as he's happy, I mean, I wouldn't, I wouldn't, I wouldn't wish him bad or anything. You know what I'm saying? Like, if that's what makes you happy, that. But I do think that I don't know, man. I'm 42 years old, maybe because I'm older. I do think that comes a point in your life where you just kind of like being away from it all and like being around your people that are going to be real around you and true around you. And I don't know that Conor can ever afford to have that. I think Conor will always be chasing stardom's a bigger piece of the stardom pie because I think that's the only thing that motivates him and that's the only thing that keeps him happy. And like I said, it's not for me, but if it's for him, okay, But I don't think he'll ever have any true friends, because I think Artem was a very loyal friend to him, and I don't. Like I said, I'm not saying it's one way or the other, but you're not even capable of having, keeping anybody around you that actually will stay that loyal. I mean, I was in the camp with him. His trainers were basically just blowing him. Like those guys weren't actually telling him the truth. I mean, Owen Roddy and Kavanaugh, they were just cheerleaders. On it, there was nobody actually telling the guy the truth. There was nobody actually doing anything worthwhile for him. Then even on fight night, they showed up. They were cool in the corner, completely unprepared. It was, he's just got a bunch of yes men around him. So if that makes him happy, if that's what keeps his self confidence up, it's good for him. It wouldn't be for me, but it's good for him. And people are gonna say, "Oh, you're not." He does. He has the money you have. I don't count other people's money. I don't. I don't understand how anybody counts anybody's money. Like, I don't see the need for that. But I'm. If we're talking about finances, I'm very, very comfortable and I'm good. And so I don't need to be worth. I don't need $100 million a year. I don't need any of that. I just need my life and my life to be comfortable, and that's what makes me happy, and that's what makes me settled, and at this point in my life, that's what I prefer to be. But I think Conor, the way he is, and like I said, maybe he likes that, but I don't think he'll ever be able to have any real friends or anybody real around him. But maybe that he doesn't need that. Maybe he just, as long as he's chasing stardom and he's pushing himself in ways to get stardom, whichever way that comes, even if it comes to be a punching bag, which he basically made his living being a punching bag the past 5 years. If that makes him happy, then it's fine with me. It's his life.
Yeah. Well, I suppose just from your own point of view, then, like, obviously your story has been set, but I wouldn't say it's over. You're still a very young man in terms of moderate terms, but what's next for you? Are you just going to continue being an analyst? Would you go into coaching of any kind, or what's?
No. Listen, I work as an analyst. I'm just trying to just honestly, man, I'm trying to, be a little more spiritual in my life. I see the way the world is, and even though I'm comfortable, I see that a lot of people in the world are not comfortable, and it's getting a lot harder for people in the world. And so, I do have a belief that God exists, there's got to be something. It's got to happen in the world. I'm not going to get all preachy, but I'm certainly been more curious about the spiritual aspect of things recently, and I plan to continue to explore that more in my personal life. As a professional life is concerned, hey man, I'm working, so it's good. I work with Pro Box TV. They're a good company. I work with BYB Bare Knuckle. They're a fun company to work for, and everything in between. So it'll be good.
And then just in your own life, then will you be, would you get over to much Serie A games? Who would be your team now that you support?
Yeah, I still follow the Serie A. I actually watched Friday's game. I didn't get to watch much of yesterday, but Friday's game of Napoli smashed you. That was unbelievable.
5-1, wasn't it?
The 5-1, 5-1, yeah. Yeah, I grew up a Juventus fan. My father got me a Juventus kit when I was a little kid. Like I was about 5 years old in Italy. So I liked Juventus from then on. Then when I won my first world championship in 2007, AC Milan invited me to Milanello, and that was the Champions League winning side. I came in November, and in May they just beaten Liverpool in the Champions League. So I went there 6 months later. So I was hanging out in Milanello for a week. That was a really cool experience. So I started rooting for Milan after that.
Inzaghi,
because Inzaghi too that day. Yeah, they had Nesta. What a team, And so Maldini was there, everything. So it was a really.
Ancelotti was manager, wasn't he?
Yeah, Ancelotti was manager, and Leonardo was the assistant coach. Yep, Leonardo was the assistant. Yep, absolutely, you got a good memory. And so that was a fun experience, and I started rooting for Milan after that. But now, I'll be honest with you, especially when they tried that Super League thing, that kind of turned me off. All these elite teams started getting that Super League thing. You know what I root for now, man? I like Napoli. They're a Southern team. I'm not gonna say I root for them hardcore. Like I don't have a particular team I root for hardcore unless it's the Italian national team. But in Serie A, like honestly, if Napoli wins, I'll be happy. One thing I do root for though, I root for any Serie A team in Europe. Any Serie A team. I don't have I'm not one of these people where like if you're a Milan fan, you don't root for Inter even in Europe or vice versa, or even they do in England where the Man City team fan won't root for a Man United fan won't root for Man United even in Europe. I think any Italian team that does well in Europe is great for the league, and I want the league to do well because I feel like it's fallen off a lot in my lifetime, and so I root for any Serie A team in European competitions. And within Italy, I probably have a little bit of a bias for Napoli because they're a Southern team, but otherwise I enjoy watching the league and it's fun.
Well, I think they came so close to winning the league in previous years, and Juventus were so strong that it'd be nice to see them win the league. And obviously, with Diego Maradona passing away as well, there's that kind of thing where you'd love to see them win.
And they named the stadium. They used to call it the São Paulo, and now it's the Diego Maradona Stadium. So it'll be a good. It'd be good if they. Honestly, I think they're very good this year. Honestly, they we'll see. I think they can compete for the Champions League as well. So it's a good team.
Yeah, because they beat Liverpool. They beat them like 4-1.
Yeah, Liverpool. They beat Ajax. They're on a good little run. We'll see.
Yeah.
See how it plays out.
Well, I actually quite like Napoli, but I when I was but around that time when Inzaghi scored the 2 goals, obviously I was a big Everton fan, and seeing Liverpool. I haven't watched Istanbul 2 years before that. To see.
I was total. They robbed that game. How do you, that's crazy. How do you give that penalty kick, man? How do you give that penalty, that third goal? But Gattuso didn't touch Giroud. He didn't touch him, man. How do you guys referee call that in a Champions League final? Oh man,
I've been 3-0 up as well though to give it away. But anyway, got back then the 2 years later, and what a team that was, that AC Milan team. Yeah, Inzaghi. Then you had at the back.
Clarence Seedorf was there. Iniesta, Clarence Seedorf. I think Dida was the keeper. Yeah. You had it's funny because when I was there, I met Brazilian Ronaldo too. He was there too, and I met him 6 months later, and they just picked him up at the end of his career.
What's he like? Good, he was the GOAT.
Pirlo was there.
He was good.
No, Ronaldo, dude, Brazilian Ronaldo had a prime that was unbelievable. That guy was bullet speed, control of the ball, physically strong. I mean, one of maybe the best finishers that I've seen in my life that I've watched, like that I could say, in my opinion, are the best finishers. And I've seen terrific footballers. Marco Van Basten and Ronaldo from Brazil. I mean, killer finishers.
What about Batistuta?
Killer finishers. Batistuta too, unbelievable. Batistuta, Christian Vieri for a little bit was a killer finisher as well. Where he bury guys. Crespo, like I said, I've seen a lot of great players, but the my two guys that I say, wow, those. I mean, they kill keepers. I mean, keepers are dead if those guys are presented in front of them. Van Basten and Ronaldo. Oh, sick! I just missed out on Platini because Platini's final year was in '87. I literally just missed out on him because I started watching in '88. So I can't judge Michel Platini for this, but
he came
Van
in.
Basten was there. Van Basten got there right. I think the second season I started watching. He was a monster. I tell you what, Serie A had everybody. It had Maradona at that time. It had so many good players. Van Basten was the scariest one. When I started watching Serie A, Van Basten was the scariest guy in the league. I'm telling you, he was sick.
Was it AC Milan he scored that volley? You know, from the angle.
Yeah,
or was that
the volley? That was the European Cup final against the USSR. That was in 1988 European Cup final, and they had actually lost in the group stage to the USSR earlier in the tournament. The finalists, USSR and Holland, had been in the same group earlier in the tournament, which ironically, weirdly, happens sometimes with the European Cup a lot. You know, it happened again in '96 with Germany and the Czech Republic. They had been in the same group. But USSR beat Holland in the group stage, and then Holland beat them in the final, and that was a sick goal by Van Basten. But then what he did in Serie A, I saw him do some crazy things in Serie A, man. I mean, that he was such a great finisher. To tell you the truth, I don't think that everybody ever saw the best of Van Basten. He had a lot of injuries, and he had to retire early. But even the last couple of years of his career was already kind of done. Sick player, honestly. The best finisher, him and Ronaldo, the best finishers I've seen in my life, and I've seen some terrific. I've been blessed enough to have watched Serie A in its prime years. And unfortunately, cursed enough to have watched it fall apart too. But we'll see how it goes. I still root for it. I still love the league.
Yeah, well, I don't know if you've ever got a chance, but if you haven't seen Ronaldo's documentary, it's on DAZN. There's that it's called Phenomenal.
The Portuguese Ronaldo or the Brazilian Ronaldo?
Oh no, the Brazilian one. It's
I haven't seen one. I haven't seen that. I saw the Portuguese Ronaldo ones. I haven't seen the Brazilian one. I'll have to check it out. It's
unbelievable because it's all about his knee injury and how he battled to come back from that, and there's all of it that you don't really see is a lot of his France '98. You know, behind the scenes, a lot of it's really really good.
Yeah,
really.
That's the thing. You know, people don't consider the injuries. You know, they don't like. Honestly, my favorite player ever is Roberto Baggio, and he had two very bad knee injuries, very very bad surgeries. You know, and Ronaldo too. Brazilian Ronaldo came back from a blown out knee. I mean, you know, you've got injuries that kill careers. Van Basten with his ankle, you can you imagine how great some of the players we've seen and how much more amazing they would have been if it wasn't for injury problems. I mean, I just named three guys that were already phenomenal, but without the injuries might be, you know, everybody on this planet would know who they are. You know, like that's how good those guys are. That's how good that's the potential those guys had. They still had terrific careers, but they to me, they didn't get the max out of it because of the injuries. Terrific players.
Yeah, well, I'm just going to finish it off by asking you your thoughts on the World Cup and Messi. You know, were you happy for him to finish it the way he did?
It was nice to see Messi win a World Cup, but you know, everybody's making like, oh, it was a Messi World Cup. Messi got his World Cup, but honestly, man, it wasn't like when Maradona wins the World Cup where it's literally him. And you don't win it without him. Like, honestly, Argentina are such a good team. And it's not like Messi took control of the World Cup. Yeah, he had some assists. He had some goals. Yes, absolutely. But it wasn't a Messi-centric World Cup. Argentina were a good team. And yes, Messi was an intricate part of the team. But it wasn't a Messi-centric World Cup. Like, in 1986 World Cup, that's a Maradona World Cup. Like, without Maradona, Argentina doesn't do anything. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Even in 1990, to be honest with you, even though Maradona didn't score in the '90 World Cup, Maradona was an intricate part of a lot of it, a lot of what they did. You know, the goal against Brazil, where he basically went through the team and then passed off to Caniggia. Some of the, you know, they were things he was doing in '90 that were very, very intricate part of the team. Messi did some nice things, but it wasn't like, oh my goodness, without Messi, would they have won? I don't know, man. I'll be honest with you. The Copa America final, Di Maria scored the year before, and even in this final, yeah, he got the penalty kick. But again, I mean, it was. I think Di Maria scored in this final too, right? I think Di Maria scored in the World Cup final as well. Yeah, Di Maria is a clutch player. I tell you, Di Maria is a clutch player. That guy shows up. You know, Messi's a good player. Don't get me wrong. I was happy to see him win, but I don't know, man. I'm a Maradona guy. But I guess if you couldn't tell, I just outright said I'm a Diego Maradona guy.
Yeah, I can tell by the boys. But there's reasons, and there's obviously levels to that. Obviously, with that Italian bias, the fact that he went to Syria and then he ripped it up with Napoli, which I don't think Messi would do with a I don't know, like a Fiorentina.
And he was playing when they would kick your knee off if you tried to dribble guys. They would literally kick your knee off your body. You know what I mean? Like, and you wouldn't even get called for a foul. Like it was great. Different times. Honestly, you have to appreciate all the entertainers we've got to watch, including the modern guys like Ronaldo and Messi. I'm just glad I've got to watch through different generations. And the game changes, but it remains entertaining. That's what I'm happy for.
Yeah, but I think with that's the beauty of football, is the opinions. Like you'd probably say in boxing too, you have these opinions, and you can respect people's opinions as to why they think someone is better. Like for me, Messi's the best I've ever witnessed playing. But in saying that, I think if Ronaldo hadn't got those injuries, Brazilian Ronaldo, he possibly, and I was lucky enough to see both of them play, and I've seen Cristiano Ronaldo play, so I've been lucky in that sense. So. Yeah, just Messi would be for me, and I think if he's not in that Argentina team, I don't think they win that World Cup. I know you're saying that Maradona was the main reason that they won it before, but I don't think that without Messi leading that team.
No, I wouldn't say they would have won it without him either. But I also think like without a Di Maria, they also won't win the World Cup. Like when Maradona in '86, it's Maradona setting up Borussia. Maradona was a great player, but it's also when you talk about the best player ever, you're talking about like a number 10, you got to compare number 10 separately than anybody else, right? Because a number 10 is a creator as well as a goal scorer. Then you've got like straight up goal scorers like number 9s, like Van Basten, like Ronaldo, Brazilian Ronaldo. I think you have to rate those guys separately because otherwise it just becomes a conversation of what position do you like best, right? Because you call it the best number 10s. You think of guys like Maradona for sure. Roberto Baggio. In Italy, we had Totti recently. You've got
Del Piero, quality.
Del Piero, I think he's a bit overrated, but he's a good player. I think Del Piero's a bit overrated, honestly. I think he's a solid player, but I don't think he goes down as I don't think he goes down in the conversation with Baggio or even a Totti. A lot of his goals were scored when they were match fixing, and internationally, he never really was a standout player internationally. So he's a solid player, but I wouldn't put him in the same conversation with those guys.
In the 06 World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, in the '06 World Cup, he was part of an overall squad. He scored in the 121st minute against Germany, but other than that, he was just part of the squad. And you know what? He made his penalty in the final. Del Piero was always a good penalty kick taker. But I don't know. I mean,
no, he's not the level of Messi.
I also remember him missing a completely empty net in about the 70th minute of the European Cup final in 2000, which it's hard to forgive because if you go up 2-0 in that game in the 70th minute, you've just buried the European Cup. Instead, he missed basically an empty net, and then Wiltor ties the game in the 94th minute, and then we end up losing in a golden goal from Trezeguet. So I mean, there's things that like I said, Del Piero was an overall solid player, but I can't rate him in the same conversation as some guys. Like, you give me a Roberto Baggio, I'm gonna give you like the same conversation. He belongs in the same conversation as a Maradona, as a Cruyff, as those kind of guys.
On Zidane?
Zidane as well, unbelievable. I mean, Zidane is sick, unbelievable. And again, I was fortunate enough to watch him in Serie A too because he played at Juve for a few years.
Yeah.
I mean, so I would watch him on a weekly basis. A sick player. What a talent. Honestly, he's not talked about enough. Yeah, that guy's unbelievable.
Him and Ronaldo. I started watching football at the France '98 World Cup, and obviously him and Ronaldo and Zidane in that World Cup.
I mean, you had a Serie A where they had Zidane at Juve and Ronaldo at Inter, and those were probably the two best teams in the world at that time, and they were battling for the Serie A title. I mean, I was watching. What a league I was watching! It was crazy. It was just like a treat.
Juventus as well at the time. Henry,
yeah, but Henry was sort of a bust at Juventus. Not that he was not worthy, but the system. Again, talking about the system with coaching, it didn't work well for Henry. It's funny, two guys that were in Serie A that it didn't really work out system-wise, but they're terrific players, are Patrick Kluivert and Thierry Henry. Didn't really have a great Serie A career, but they were unbelievable everywhere else they played, and they were unbelievable players. So, again, it's one of those things that I said earlier in the conversation about sometimes you don't mesh well with the style, with the coach, all this other stuff, Terrific players, but they didn't really stand out in the Serie A.
Yeah, when you can fitting in and stuff like that as well.
And two of my favorite players, by the way, Kluivert and Henry were two of the most fun players to watch.
I loved Kluivert in that '98 World Cup for Holland. He was brilliant. And then you had players like Bergkamp and all. So many good footballers, man. I could sit here and talk all day about them. But I'm conscious of your time because I've had you there for an hour and 20 minutes. So, Paulie, I suppose we'll leave it there and I'll let you get on with your day. I just want to say thanks so much for coming on. It's been a real pleasure to have you on. If you had said to me before Christmas that we were going to have you on, I wouldn't have believed you. So thanks very much. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. My pleasure, man. You have a good one. All right. Good
All right.
conversation. Good chat.
I'll speak to you soon.
All
Take care,
right.
man. Thank you.
Cheers.